in the first session, we talked about how to handle regret. And John makes this insight in 1 John 2. He says, basically, the only appropriate response to God's grace is to choose to live better, right? Like if you get a fresh start, a second chance, a clean slate, an opportunity to write a better story, do take it. And so I want to talk to you about that in this session. I want to talk to you about making better decisions. I want to talk to you about a filter for decision-making that will lead our life to life, not death, right? So the absolute worst filter for decision-making is being a psychopath, all right? So if you're, and look, it's Tuesday night, you're in church, I'm assuming there's no psychopaths, but if you're a psychopath, do cut that out, right? And at least take the next step. Like the next step is it's not as bad as psychopath, but it's still bad. It's being a sociopath. So you can hear the word path in there, psychopath, sociopath. Again, Tuesday night, you're in church, assuming no sociopaths, right? The next one though is apathy. So you hear that path in there, apathy. Apathy is like indifference. It's like whatever will be, she'll be right. It's living every day with no intention. And that leads to a problem because if we don't know what we're saying yes to, we'll have no idea what we're supposed to say no to, right? And so the power of yes is more important than, like, the principle is simply this. You don't have to have a plan to fail. You just have to have no plan, and failure will be a part of your experience, right? Like you don't have to intend to be unfit. You just have to have no fit plan. And unfit will overtake you, right? You don't have to intend to be broke. You just have to have no financial plan, and brokenness will overtake you, right? And so it's that. So there's psychopath, there's sociopath, there's apathy, and then the next one is better than all three of those, but it's still not great. And that is it right or is it wrong, right? And so if we only consider is it right or is it wrong, that'll ruin our life. And the reason is because there's a lot of things that aren't wrong, but they're just dumb. They're not wise. And it's the lie of the talking snake. The lie of the talking snake is, if you don't know what I'm referencing, it's in the book of Genesis. There was a snake in the garden, and he evidently talked, right? And there was this talking snake, and the lie of the talking snake is that you can master life by mastering right and wrong. And no, you can't, because there's a lot of things that aren't wrong, but they're not wise. And just from a neuropsychology point of view, if you make 100 decisions and 99 of them are awesome and one is bad, you'll obsess about the one you got wrong, right? And so that's a real problem. And so anytime we present ourselves as the masters of good and evil, we just become the church of the talking snake, right? Which here's what that sounds like. If you want to know what's right and what's wrong with the whole world, just ask us, right? And when we do that, we start defining morality as a function of imposing our convictions on everybody instead of a function of how we love our world, right? And so we don't want to be the church of the talking snake, in other words, right? So the worst filter is psychopath. The next one is sociopath. The next one is apath. The next one is only considering right and wrong. Like, it's not that we shouldn't consider right and wrong. It's just if we only consider right and wrong, it can lead to a real problem. But there's a better filter for decision making, and I'm going to do it in the form of a picture tonight, and that way, hopefully, you'll never forget it. And if you just apply this, if you don't do anything with it, it won't do anything. But if you apply this, this will be a much better filter for decision making for the rest of your life, whether it's financial, whether it's marital, relational, vocational. You can always apply this filter, and it's an early filter that finds itself really, really early in the biblical narrative, and it's a story about two brothers having conflict over a bowl of stew. Right? So this is Genesis 25. It says, the boys grew up, and Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country, while Jacob was a quiet man staying amongst the tents. Isaac, who had a taste for wild game, loved Esau, but Rebekah loved Jacob. So you've got this dysfunctional family. The dad loves one kid more than the other, so the mom makes up for that. It's just not a good thing. Once when Jacob was cooking stew, Esau came in from the open country famished, and he said to Jacob, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished." That is why he's called Edom. Now that is a Jewish joke. If you don't speak Hebrew, there's no way you can see it. You're like, what's so funny about that? I'll show you in a second. That is the writer of Genesis 25 absolutely having a go at Esau. All right, I'll explain in a second. Jacob replied, "First, sell me your birthright." So look, I'm about to die, Esau said, which I think we could all agree is a bit of an exaggeration. Like he walked in. Right? He's not about to die. Look, I'm about to die, Esau said. What good is the birthright to me? Pause. If you're going to try to take notes, that's the critical question. What good is that is the reason why in all rabbinical literature and in the New Testament, The one guy who's considered the most godless human being ever is Esau. And that's really confronting because the Bible's full of nefarious characters. Ahab, Ammon, who introduced child sacrifice in a place called Gehenna, Manasseh, who made it national law, Jezebel, like the charismatics for years have had a field day with old Jezebel, you know? Like, I don't just disagree with you, you're a Jezebel, right? As if there's this ubiquitous spirit of Jezebel tormenting me. Anyway, so, Esau is the godless one, and it's because of that question. What good is the birthright to me? But Jacob said, swear to me first. So he swore an oath to him, selling his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and lentil stew. And he ate and he drank and he got up and left. So Esau despised his birthright. Now, social science tells me that half this room are linear learners and the other half of this room are narrative learners. And so if you're a narrative learner, you've been loving this so far. If you're a linear learner, you're starting to get lost. So if you're a linear learner, I did this for you. Next slide. So you basically have a dysfunctional family. You have Jacob. If your name's Jacob in English, it's good, right? But in Hebrew, you wouldn't name your kid Jacob. It means liar. So God later graciously changes the name to Israel. There's a guy named Esau. He's a hunter. And he comes in, and this whole conflict happens over a bowl of stew. Jacob's cooking stew. And in English, it says, Esau came in and said, quick, give me some red stew. Now, just 10 seconds of Bible nerddom here. Translators are not tasked with being perfect or word for word. They're trying to make it literal, right? And so, literate. So they're trying to make it readable, not literal, right? And so essentially, because the context is stew, it says, quick, give me some red stew. But in Hebrew, it's much more simple and caveman-y than that. Essentially, next slide, this is all Esau says, ha'adam, ha'adam. Ha'adam, ha'adam. Red is ha is the, Adam is red. Even putting the word stuff, probably, it's just the red. Ha-Adam, ha-Adam, give me the red. Now, can you see a translator's problem? Like, give me the red. Like, or it doesn't even say give me, it just says ha-Adam, it just says the red. Ooh, oh, the red. Ha-Adam, ha-Adam. He's like a caveman. It's like ha-Adam, 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 ha-Adam. You might can hear that, like, how dumb, right? Ha'adam. Like, just 10 seconds of Bible nerddom here. In ancient Hebrew, there are no adverbs. So you can't go, I really, really like it. You would just repeat yourself. So peace, shalom, big peace, shalom, shalom, real big peace, shalom, shalom, shalom. Like, you just, so for him to come in and go, ha'adam, 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 how dumb, ha'adam, ha'adam. It's like the red. I really, really, really want the red. The ha'adam, ha'adam. So they change his name to Edom. Ha'adam is red. Edom is red man. So it's kind of like this. Have you ever known someone that did something so stupid that their friends gave them a nickname? And then it sticks, you know? So you're like 8 and you do something stupid and then all your friends in elementary school give you a nickname and then you're 50 and they're still calling you that, right? My nickname when I was a kid was Niblet, you know? Anyway, so Edom, like, are you the plonker who sold everything he could be for one bowl of ha'adam? How'd that work out for you, Edom? Hey, what's up, red dude? Hey, that guy sold everything he could be for one bowl of ha'adam. He's Edom, right? It's that. Now you get the Jewish joke. So next slide. So you have this idea of despising the birthright. The word despise is to profane. It could also mean godless. It doesn't mean to do something wrong. It could be to do something wrong. So profanity, we tend to think of profanity as cursing. So saying words that we shouldn't say. And look, I'm not telling you if that's okay to do. I'm just simply saying profane is much bigger than that. Profane is anytime you use your breath or your words to hurt or to tear down or to do nothing. It could mean wasting your breath. Right? So there was 2 postures of the heart in Hebrew culture. There was hallowing the name. That was basically to say hallowed be your name was I commit my life to fulfilling the full possibilities and potentials that the 24-hour gift of God's breath gives me. It was that. But the opposite of that would be profaning the name. That would be even though God gave me his breath, I'm going to use that energy to hurt someone or to not do anything. That was profane. And so when people say, I don't swear, I don't curse, I don't use like the F word or whatever. Okay, and don't. But it's one thing not to curse. It's a whole thing to absolve yourself from the responsibility of hallowing your breath because you don't curse. It's kind of like, okay, you're not cursing, but your whole life is a curse word. Like your whole life is profaning God's breath on your life. And then there's this idea of iniquity, which in Hebrew is the word Avon, which I think is pretty cool because it's a makeup company now. But So 10 seconds of Bible nerddom. Every Hebrew letter is a picture, so every Hebrew word's a comic strip. So when the Jewish people read words, it was like a comic strip. And so the A is an I, a V is a hook, and N is fish multiplying. So so essentially, when the ancient Hebrew people read iniquity, they read whatever your eye hooks to multiplies. So in other words, in this story, what happens is not something wrong, it's the wrong thing gets his attention. Ha'adam, 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 ha'adam. And his need for the bowl got bigger and bigger and bigger. And we experience this all the time. The Bible is best read as the villain, not the hero, right? And what I mean by that is that we tend to read the Bible and we read ourselves in as the good guy, and we fail to miss the lesson of what if we're not the good guy? What if we'll read this and go, who would do that? But we do this all the time. Have we ever had something get our attention and it got too much weight? Like if you ever had a $100 problem, but it was taking up a $10,000 of headspace, right? It's like, that's Avon, that's iniquity. So a later writer said, fix your eyes to, right? So it's this, in other words, whatever gets our attention gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And then there's this idea of the birthright. We don't have a modern day equivalent of birthright. We have inheritance. But the birthright was humongous. Next slide. So birthright was like carrying the family name for survival. There was no Department of Records to tell you who owned what. There was no deed office. The government, like you had to stand for your family. It was imagery for everything your family stood for. Because of the weight of it, it entitled a person to twice the inheritance. So whoever the firstborn was, he got double the inheritance, and it never made it to his pocket. It was payment for all the extra stuff they had to do. Like they had to marry their brother's wives if the brother died. Like, could you imagine that? Like, if I have 8 brothers and through a series of unfortunate events, they all die and they have 4 wives apiece, I just inherited 32 women and all their children. Like, can you see where the double portion never made it to my pocket? It's a New World and Target, right? So there's a whole message I could do about birthright, but for tonight's purpose, all I want you to think of is the word birthright was a summary statement of everything you could be. It was wrapped up in this thing. And in that moment, Esau goes, what good is everything I can be if I don't get the next thing I want? If I don't get this next urge, this bowl of ha'adam, ha'adam. If you got lost in the first 9 minutes of this message, come back right now. Here's the whole message on one slide. And you might be thinking you could have just started with this. Next slide. Esau traded everything he could be for one momentary urge. And here's the thing. Here's what's so confronting. It's not wrong. Is it wrong to trade your birthright for a bowl? No, it's just stupid. It's his birthright. He could do what he wants to with it. And this is the problem with only considering right and wrong. We don't consider the total cost. We only consider the immediate urge. Like I'm American and Australian. I have dual citizenship. And Americans, they don't have this need to travel, and it's because of their ethnocentricity. That's not good. They think they're the center of the universe anyway. But Australians have this thing where they just want to travel, you know. And I was talking to an Australian, a 19-year-old kid, you know. I said, what's your plan? He said, I'm thinking about taking a year off and walking around Europe to find myself. And I thought, ha'adam. Like, look, if you're over 40. I'm 50. Could you imagine telling your dad you were going to take a year off to find yourself? My dad would have been like, oh, look, there you are. I have found you. Get a job. Right? And then we say stupid that he said, oh, I figured out how to do it for 10 grand. Look, I've worked in Europe. I've never lived in Europe, but you cannot go to Europe for 10 grand. Not free. No way. You probably can't even fly there for that almost. But 10 grand, but let's just say you could. Is that the best use of 10 grand? Hardly. If you invest $10,000 at 19 in an S&P 500 index fund, by 65, it's over $600,000. Hope you like the trip, right? Like the immediate cost is 10 grand, but the long-term cost is much. And again, anything wrong with that? No, it's just dumb. And here's the thing, right? I hope we all live to 90. I'll bless you. Like 90 is great. Like I don't want to wish too much over 90 on anybody. Like that gets ugly. But at 90 years old, you'll look back at your life, and it'll be one of two narratives. Narrative number one: I woke up every day posturing my heart towards fulfilling my birthright. In other words, I woke up every day with the posture towards fulfilling everything I could be in God. And along the way, I made mistakes with zeros attached. As a matter of fact, I made more mistakes than people sitting around doing nothing, because people giving it a go are going to make more mistakes. This is not a function of the sum of the mistakes and the regrets. This is a function of the posture of the heart. Because as we learned in the first session, our lack of faithfulness doesn't compromise his faithfulness. And he's renewing our story every single time, right? If we want him to, right? And so it'll be that, or you'll be 90 and you'll look back and you go, unfortunately, my life is a summation of living from one urge to the next urge, to the next urge, to the next urge. And it always overpromised and underdelivered. And thank God he's faithful to forgive me, but my life could have been worth so much more. And so if you've missed the point, instead of only considering right and wrong, here's the imagery. For the rest of your life, I want you to ask yourself, does this decision belong to the bowl or the birthright? Is this a pursuit of my next urge, or is it intentionally pursuing everything God has for me? And that's a much more dynamic way to live. There's less wiggle room in that. Because sometimes we trade birthrights for bowls. It's common to all of us. Like, next slide. Like, here's a guy named Moses, and God had a huge birthright for him, free a bunch of slaves. That's big. But he resisted. And Moses said to the Lord, "O Lord, I've never been eloquent, neither in past nor since you've spoken to your servant. I'm slow of speech and of tongue." And the Lord said, "Who gave man his mouth? Who makes him deaf or mute? Who gave him sight? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go." In other words, I've got this huge birthright for you, Moses. Moses, like, next slide, he's like, I don't have the skill. I'm willing to trade this whole birthright for this urge to be insecure. Or later, there's a guy named Gideon. And Gideon, the same group of people, back enslaved to Midian. And so God says, I got this huge birthright for you. I want you to free these slaves. And Gideon resisted. Check this out. And the Lord turned to him and said, "Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of the Midian's hands. Am I not sending you?" "But Lord," Gideon asked, "how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I'm the least in my family." If you're following his logic, my tribe is the least of the tribes, my clan is the least of that, my family's the least of that, and I'm the least of my family. In other words, I'm literally the worst person on earth you could choose to do this. And again, next slide, he was willing to trade his birthright for a bowl of, I don't have the heritage. God's like, I got this huge birthright for you. And you're like, yeah, but have you seen my family? I come from rednecks or something. Later, there's this guy named Jeremiah. And evidently Jeremiah, at least I don't know how old he was, but at very least in his own mind, he was young. He was too young to do something. This is the word of the Lord came to me saying, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations." But sovereign Lord, I don't know how to speak. What is this with not knowing how to speak? I think by this point in the Bible, God's like, is there anybody that is not a whiner? Like, is there anyone that'll just give it a go? You know? Next slide. Next slide. I don't have the maturity. And these are, again, we're better to read the Bible at times with forcing ourselves to ask the question, what if I'm the one that doesn't get it? Like, we always are the crucified, never the crucifier, but we're never the Jonah character who never gets it, right? Do I ever want mercy for myself and judgment for everybody else? And in this context, have I ever drew back not to do wrong things? It's Tuesday night, you're in church. I'm assuming no one in this room is ruining their life with evil and wickedness and malice. And if you are, cut it out. But how many of us have drawn back from God's best for us because I don't have the skill, I don't have the heritage, I don't have the maturity? It's just in us all to trade a birthright for a bowl. Perhaps the one that's most applicable to us is there was this nation, right? It was called Israel, and Israel was given a mandate by God to be a blessing to all nations. And they resisted it. So a full third of the Old Testament is, if you don't maintain justice and righteousness, you're going to lose your land. Like, this thing God gave you is not like this carte blanche to do whatever you want to do. And the prophets were just calling them out, like, what are you doing? And then Jesus really calls them out. This is Matthew 23. Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those sent to you. How often I've longed to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were not willing. Look, now your house is left to you desolate, for I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. In other words, I have this huge birthright for you, Israel. I want you to be a blessing to all nations. But next slide, it says, I'm not willing to do that. Sometimes we trade our birthright for a bowl of insecurity. I don't have the skill, or I don't have the heritage, or I don't have the maturity. But frankly, sometimes it's just we don't want it. We just don't want it. There's such a better way to live. There's this somebody, I don't know who, but somebody wrote the book of Hebrews. People have a lot of opinions on who it was. I don't really reckon it matters so much, but it's so confronting. So the writer of Hebrews writes this in Hebrews chapter 12. Check this out. See to it that no one is sexually immoral or is godless like Esau. And here's what's so confronting about that. Ready? That's Hebrews chapter 12. Hebrews chapter 12 comes right after Hebrews chapter 11. Go back and look at Hebrews chapter 11 and ask this question. Who did more wrong things? By faith, Abraham. Abraham gave his wife to Pharaoh's harem. And it says he greatly profited from Egyptian affluence while she was suffering in the harem. If CNN and the internet would have been around by then, what would we say about Abraham? I would make a case that Abraham would never be welcome to speak at the largest conferences in New Zealand. But Esau probably be asked to give his testimony because all he did was trade a birthright for a bowl. But to the writer of Hebrews, Abraham was to be commended and Esau was the godless one. Isaac did something similar. Moses was a premeditated murderer. I looked this way and that and seeing no one, I killed the man and hid him in the sand. Problem was the next day the sand shifted. He got his legs sticking out of the sand. God said, you'll do. I'll have you write the foundation of all scripture. Who did more wrong things, Moses or Esau? Moses by far. Samson lost a bet and killed 30 people. That is not good. That is not good. Like, who did more wrong things, Samson or Esau? By far Samson. Samson wouldn't be asked to speak at the biggest conferences in New Zealand. Esau maybe. What's going on here? By faith, Jephthah killed his own daughter for a rash vow. David had 700 women. 700 women. David was dating the entire town of Tokoroa. And you know, there are Christian denominations that in their written bylaws would never let David speak on their stage, but they'll open a book David wrote, call it the Word of God, and fail to see the hypocrisy in that. By faith, Solomon had 1,000 women. 1,000. That's Gisborne. Gisborne. Maybe I should pick a town I know how to say. It's New Plymouth. That's easier. God said, you want to write a book on wisdom? Imagine that. Excuse me, sir. Are you the guy that successfully navigated the affections of 1,000 women? I am. You got to be the smartest guy on earth. We should write a book together. Here's the thing, right? The writer of Hebrews 11 writes about all these people who by our moral compass did more wrong things than the godless man. And here would be the reasonable question. Maybe the writer of Hebrews had access to a story we don't have access to. Maybe Esau did something heinous, right? But no. He references the same story. Who for a single meal sold his inheritance rights as the oldest son. Afterwards, as you know, when he wanted to inherit the blessing, he was rejected. He could bring about no change of mind, though he sought the blessing with tears. In other words, forgiveness of God is one thing, but being able to change the consequences of your choices, that's a whole other thing. Right? Like, what's going on? What? And here's the thing, right? Here's how I read it. I'm open to reading it differently. It doesn't seem like the compass of the writer of Hebrews is summing up the totality of people's mistakes or regrets. The difference between the people in Hebrews 11 and the person in Hebrews 12 is the people in Hebrews 11 woke up every day posturing their heart toward accomplishing everything God had for them. And along the way, they made more mistakes than the godless one. Because when you're giving it a go every day, you're going to make mistakes. The reason Esau's godless, it's borrowing the same word from Hebrew, to despise. It's like, what good is the birthright to me? In other words, Esau didn't make as many mistakes because he didn't see his life as any more valuable than the next urge he had. And that became a problem. See to it that no one is godless like Esau. If you got lost in any of this, come back right now. Let's see if I can bring this next slide. Here's the question is, do we despise our birthright? That doesn't mean doing wrong things necessarily. It can mean my days are long because I'm wasting my breath. Do we live as though there's no higher purpose which profanes our destiny? The problem with this is that pattern simply leads us from living from one urge to the next urge, to the next urge, to the next urge, to the next urge, to the next urge. And at some point, before we know it, we're 60, we're 70, we're 80, we're 90. And our whole life is living from one bowl to the next bowl, to the next bowl, to the next bowl, to the next bowl. And here's what's harder to see because it's far away in the story, but it's really critical to the story. Next slide. What seems so great, the ha'adam, the red stuff, when he got it, it was beans. It says Jacob gave him lentils. What are lentils? Pretty tasteless beans. If you've tuned out or got lost, tune back right now. Here's the entire sermon on one slide. And you might be thinking, you probably could have just started with this. Next slide. Esau traded everything he could be for a bowl of beans. And we look at that and go, how dumb. Ha'adam. But don't we do the same thing? If we only consider right and wrong without considering the far-reaching, it's just one more beer. And look, having a beer with your friend is one thing. But if you're the type of person that if you have one, you're going to have 20, that's different. And if you don't know the difference, think about it. And you know you're the 20 beer guy. You just know it. You've never been able to control yourself. And you open the fridge, and there it is. Ha'adam. And then we get in stupid arguments like, is it a sin to drink? That's not your problem. Your problem is you drink 20. And so we absolve ourselves from the actual bigger issue. And you give in. You think you'll die without it. And then you trade in big things like the dignity of yourself and the respect of your wife and the respect of your children and your own financial security. And you wake up the next day with the worst hangover ever, with lost dignity. And you're like, man, I thought I would die without that. But now it's beans. It's got a bad taste. If you've ever known anybody that struggled with addiction, it's that. It's ha'adam. I'll die without the next thing. And then when it's done, it's like beans. Boy, that was beans. Or maybe your issue's overeating. And it's cake, you know? And you know you're overweight for your size, and your doctor has said, look, you're pre-diabetic, you got some problems with your heart, you really need to stop the sugar, right? But you love it, right? So it's just there, and you open up the fridge, and it's your grandmother's yellow sponge cake with the ice, and it's going ha'adam. And you know the difference. If you're the type of person that can have a bite of cake, that's one thing. But if you have one bite of cake, you're gonna eat the whole flipping cake. And if you don't know the difference, think about it, that right? And so there it is, ha'adam. And you give in and you eat the whole cake. And before the sweetness is totally out of your mouth and the whole thing's going to your butt, you're like, oh, I thought I'd die without that. Boy, that was just beans. Or you go to the mall. Maybe your thing's overspending. Hey, have you ever cost yourself financial peace because you bought something that probably you shouldn't have done? And this is what happens, right? You go to the mall And the mall, all it is, walking through Westfield, right? All it is store after store after store. Ha-adam, 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 ha-adam. Hey, you don't feel good yet, but that shirt is the one thing you're missing, or that skirt, or this pair of shoes. Hey, those other 10 pair, they didn't do it, but this one will do it. Ha-adam. Ha-adam. And you buy something you can't afford with money you don't have to impress people you don't like, and then you're wondering, why is Satan attacking my finances? And it's like, Satan is not attacking your finances. He could take a vacation with you. You are attacking. And so you give something awesome like financial peace, you give it up for beans. It's just beans. Or maybe you're a car person, you know. Cars are unbelievably bad. Here's what a car is. Give me 50 grand, and in 3 years, I'll hand you something worth 25. And if you can't afford it up front, we'll give you the right to pay 8% interest for it. Right? Now, men struggle with this more than women. So men have a condition that women have less of, and that condition is called car fever. So car fever is the irrational need to drive something new while rationalizing it as something more reliable, right? And so men get this car fever, right? And now you can do it this way. You start looking on the internet. Or your friend in his Facebook page, he's like, hey, everybody, look at my new ride, you know? But nobody ever posts the truth. The truth is, hey, everybody, look what I just did. I bought something I can't afford with money I don't have to impress people I don't like. I'm going to be broke for years because of this decision. No, look at my new ride. Right? And so the last place you want to go if you have car fever is the car dealership, because the car dealership is full of car salesmen, and they're walking around with car fever thermometers. Ha-adam, ha-adam, ha-adam. And they have this car fever thermometer. They just don't tell you it's rectal. Right? And they're going, ha-adam, 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 ha-adam. Chicks dig the V8. You really want the V8. Ha-adam, ha-adam. And they're very clever. They put off the first payment 45 days. So by the time the newness wears off, you're going, I'm paying how much for this? It's going down how fast in value? I thought I would die without this, but it's just beans. Have you ever shared something you shouldn't have shared? Like you had some news and you just couldn't wait to share it. And social media has made this infinitely worse. Look, once you post it, it's there. And then it's there. I don't know what people are thinking. I just think the whole world wants to know about this. What? Like, we ha-adam. And so we think, and we give in and we share some slanderous thing about somebody. And as soon as it's out of our mouth, it's like that overpromised and underdelivered. Boy, I thought I would die without sharing that. It was just beans. You see this when people introduce sexual things too early in a relationship. So when somebody introduces sexual things too early in a relationship, but just full disclosure, I have a master's degree in clinical psychology, and in the area of sexuality, I am qualified to sort your head out on this, okay? So, but just clinically speaking, when you introduce sexuality too early, it releases like a Novocaine in your brain. No, it's not literally Novocaine, I'm being metaphorical. Novocaine is the numbing agent that the dentists use. So what happens is introducing sexual things too early will numb you to the character flaw that will drive you insane once the Novocaine wears off, right? This is why the biggest clump of divorces is at 7 years, because about 5 years into a marriage, you can't out-sexualize the thing that irritates you. And so what happens is they come and see us and they say, this isn't the person I married. No, it is. It is. He was a slob and lazy, but you just had Novocaine and now you have to deal with it, right? Or she's not the woman I married. No, wait, no, she is. She was critical, cantankerous, jealous, possessive, quite frankly horrible, and she couldn't cook. And you were like, well, there's plenty of Novocaine, whatever, right? And so, so what happens is we think we'll die without it, but then when we get what we think we want, it's just beans. It's just beans. There's so many things that we could think through this. And here's my thing. Next slide. Is the story of your life going to be a pursuit of the birthright or summation of living from one bowl to the next? From one bit of beans to the next. Jesus had this incredible insight, and it sounds ridiculous for me to say, but and he said to them all, if anyone would come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. That sentence reads okay without, if anyone will come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. That reads perfect, but daily. In other words, to Jesus, Christianity was not a one-time decision. It was some sort of daily surrender because all of us have our ha'adam. So I want to pray for you as we close the night out, and you can get in on these prayers or not. If the Holy Spirit's moving you, I'm urging you to. If not, just ignore me. There's no vacancy in the Trinity for me, but maybe we could pray a couple prayers. Lord Jesus, let no one ever reject you because of the way we're presenting you. Second prayer is, if you're really brave, you can pray something like this. Holy Spirit, would you name my bowl? Would you bring to my mind whatever my bowl is, my ha'adam. Maybe it's food or spending, or maybe it's outburst of anger. Have you ever lost your temper because you thought you'd die if you didn't get it all out, and then you're like, boy, that was beans. Maybe it's lust. Maybe it's gluttony. Maybe it's impulsivity. Maybe you should stop texting her. All affairs work this way. You think you'll die without them, but the result of it is beans. If you're really brave, like, what is the name of my bowl? Not out loud, let's just name him, her, it, the thing. Lord, would you give us the courage to crush the bowl and live for the birthright? Would you give us the grace to not summarize our regrets, but rather just get the posture of our heart right? Amen. Would you look this way? Thank you so much. Let me be part of your night. I hope Jesus got bigger, the cross worked better, the resurrection is central, scriptures got bigger, not smaller. Depending on how close you live, if you're over 40, you're going to be home before 9, which I know matters to people over 40. That's a brilliant thing. I bless you to be people who handle your regrets well, handle their regrets well, and I hope Jesus gets bigger and bigger and bigger. May you never want mercy for yourself, but justice for everybody else. And may we be people who, to quote John, my brothers and sisters, my dear children, I write this to you so that you will not sin. May we make good decisions, not based solely on right and wrong, but does it belong to the birthright or does it belong to the bowl? I bless you to be a group of people who get the taste of beans out your mouth. Until I see you next time, grace and peace.